The Ariete is a new Italian premium jet in War Thunder. Let's check it out. This plane was the final evolution of a design process that began in 1951, looking to create a new jet fighter for Italy. The Ambrosini Company used their S-7 prop trainer's airframe as the basis for a new jet prototype called the Sagittario, which first flew in January of 1953, and had a layout broadly similar to the Soviet Yak-15, with the engine up in the nose venting the jet exhaust down below the fuselage. The plane wasn't successful, but it led to the Sagittario II from the Airfer Company. The Sagittario II shared the same general layout, but it refined the airframe, added a set of cannons, and in general was just a much more serious attempt to create a military fighter rather than a research prototype. It first flew in 1956, but some elements of its performance were seen as already being obsolete, so it wasn't adopted for service. The final attempt to create a viable jet fighter out of the design was the Ariete, which was very similar to the Sagittario II, but added a second jet engine in the tail with an additional air intake along the dorsal spine of the aircraft. The second engine wasn't as large or powerful, and it was intended only to be used during zoom climbs or high-speed intercepts. The Ariete first flew in 1958, and while this design did increase the speed of the aircraft, it was obvious that it wasn't going to be competitive with the supersonic jets that were beginning to enter service with other nations. Only 2 prototypes were built, with no production order being made. What we get in War Thunder is simply the Ariete, a premium jet fighter in rank 6 of the Italian air tree at battle rating 9.3. This plane is available for Golden Eagles rather than in a pack from the web store, which might end up making it a pretty popular choice for players looking to grind Italian aircraft, or just looking for a slick little hot rod of a jet fighter. The plane is armed with a pair of 30mm Hispano 825 cannons, with 240 rounds of ammo. No external weapons, and also no selection of ammo belts. The only choice is a default belt of high-explosive incendiary tracer ammo. Now, these cannons are both a blessing and a curse. I want to be clear that these are very good weapons. They have a high rate of fire, a very flat ballistics trajectory with insane muzzle velocity, and the ammo they get is pretty effective. Truly a blessing for the plane. The curse, though, is that, like the Sagittario II in the tech tree, the ballistics profile on these guns is a complete departure from the guns on most other jets around this tier, and there can be a pretty rough adjustment period to get used to them if you're more accustomed to other jet gunfighters. I had a really rough time adjusting, and in some of the footage you're going to see me miss a lot of shots. But after a few dozen flights, I had a much better feel, and I was able to do pretty accurate shooting most of the time. Again, the good news is that these cannons are really strong, and even just one short burst that connects can blow up a target, or at least do enough superficial damage to send them into a crash. The flight performance of the Ariete is simply amazing, with an important caveat. The earlier Sagittario II it's based on was already a hot rod, but the second engine in this thing kicks it up a notch and truly gives this jet a really impressive flight envelope. It climbs almost as well as some of the supersonic jets with afterburners. It accelerates incredibly fast, and it can punch through Mach 1 in a dive from high altitude. But the caveat, this is still a subsonic plane. It's fully aerobatic, with really good turn performance below around 800 kilometers an hour. Above that, the controls lock up pretty hard, so while you can get crazy speed in a dive, be careful or you'll end up as a lawn dart. In fact, the turn performance is so crazy, and it snaps into high G turns so easily, that even with an upgraded crew, your pilot is going to be blacked out all the damn time in dogfights. The footage in this review is with an upgraded pilot, and I still blacked out constantly. The silver lining, though, is that anyone you can snare into a one-on-one fight within around 1 kilometer or so is basically screwed. It's worth mentioning that the plane bleeds off energy really fast in hard pull turns, but again, since the engine power is so strong, it's really not that much of a problem. The Ariete has combat flaps that you can deploy up to around 480 kilometers an hour, but honestly, I've never used them. It also has a very effective set of air brakes, which, on the other hand, I use constantly. Taking the Ariete out into battle is pretty fun, but it comes with some challenges. The first thing to remember is that this is a subsonic gunfighter tiered at BR 9.3, which means that about half of the time you're going to be paired up against semi-active radar missiles, Mach 2 jets, and R-60s. Meanwhile, the Ariete has no radar warning receiver, no countermeasures, and no suspended weapons. Normally, under those conditions, my suggestion would be to stay low and try to keep combat near the ground, where you can fly a bit more defensively. But, oddly, taking the Ariete up into an initial climb to high altitude actually works pretty well for me. I tend to zoom up to around 5,000 meters or so and turn into a crow, looking for things to swoop down on. Now, doing high altitude attacks also helps choose your engagements more carefully, since if the Ariete gets teamed up on, you're very likely to be missile bait, but it can still dominate most one-on-one engagements. A frustrating aspect is that even though the plane is new, people seem to be picking up on the fact that it's an incredible close-in fighter, and just running away from it. In a large number of matches where I got up-tiered, I came away with the donut because nobody will engage. It's not that people try for long-range missile shots, everyone just runs away, which can be more than a little frustrating, so prepare for that. But when you can get in close, the punishment begins, and you can do some really serious damage with this thing. Now, the Ariete only has a real limited utility for ground attack. With no external weapons and no armor-piercing ammo for the cannons, you're limited to attacking light ground targets only, and I don't really see much of a ground attack role for this plane beyond just ticket cleanup after most of the enemy team is dead. Visually, the Ariete is a really slick-looking jet. The only downside is that it doesn't have any custom paint jobs available, so this is really all you get, and there aren't any custom skins or anything up on War Thunder Live yet. Landing the plane isn't too difficult, but it comes in fast, and it can have a little bit of difficulty dumping speed on final approach. The air brakes help, and you can deploy geared around 400 kilometers an hour, flaps around 300, but without any kind of a drag chute, the landing run can sometimes be pretty long. The cockpit has a bubble canopy with outstanding visibility, and really clear, easy-to-find instruments down on the console. Overall, this thing has a really good cockpit. To close out on the Ariete, this plane has a pair of exceptionally powerful cannons, really strong engine performance, a great rate of climb, impressive maneuverability, and it gets premium bonuses. However, the ammo is a bit limited, it's still subsonic, it doesn't have any defensive systems, which hurts it badly in an up tier, and it has no external weapons. The final verdict on the Ariete is that on its own, this plane is a hot rod that can dominate close-in dogfights. But it gets put at a disadvantage by the matchmaker, so your results with it may change dramatically from match to match. Overall, this is a good premium. Just be prepared for a learning curve, as it's quite different of a bird than most of the other jets out there. As always, thanks for watching.